Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Reanimated. My name's Stuart, one of the hosts, and the other host with me this fine morning is H.A. Conrad coming out of New York. How are you?
As well as can be expected. How are you?
Similarly as expected. Well, thank you. Clearly, we're bringing all the heat and energy today, but we are bringing. We're also coming to the podcast looking at a new show, or new to us. It came out last fall. And we're going to have a little bit of news about San Diego Comic-Con, which is coming up just in a week or two, where there's going to be a fair amount of zombie and vampire news dropping, it seems, from a few different providers. So that'll be fun to talk about. Anything else we need to address? Anything terrifying or zombie-like happening in Brooklyn today? How's the cemetery doing? You still walking through there?
Oh yeah, I still walk through there. I have to go in this weekend. I haven't been in a while. But it's beautiful. It's a cool little nature preserve. So still loving that. I have not seen any zombie hamsters about. So that's good.
Where was that story set? The zombie hamster story?
I don't remember. It's some lab, undisclosed lab.
It texted me about it, so I don't. These confounded cell phone machines.
It basically said researchers. I don't know that it gave like a specific lab.
Okay.
I think it's enough to know that they basically created rage hamsters, which seems when they were trying to create docile hamsters. I do know that it's in the US. So Oh, interesting. Georgia State University, my friend. So, ground zero, Walking Dead.
Well, we don't know where ground zero for The Walking Dead was, do we? Or do we? Do we know who the first zombie was? Was it that heroin addict in Los Angeles?
I don't know.
Well, we might find out during Tales of the Walking Dead, because it might have been in France, right?
It might have been, but I feel like there's been a few news articles recently where they're like, we're never going to tell you.
And nor should they. Like, no. I've seen those headlines too. Like, Walking Dead boss was never even interested in revealing the source of the. Of course he shouldn't be.
No, because it takes all the mystery. Of course.
Yeah. Jeez Louise. It's like, oh, what did Jaws' mom and dad look like? Were they also large sharks? No, come on, guys. Settle down. But yeah. So we're not here to just be vexed at internet headlines. We are also here to talk about San Diego Comic-Con, which is apparently the only way I can say that.
I feel like you really want to say it that way.
So I don't. It just keeps happening.
Just roll with it.
I'm gonna. So there are a couple of panels about The Walking Dead. One of these kids is not like the others here. Fear the Walking Dead, nowhere to be seen. There's no panel on Fear the Walking Dead.
They're probably hiding out. I wouldn't blame them.
Shameless and Goldberg are under 24-hour protective custody.
Yeah.
So the Tales of the Walking Dead panel is on Friday, July 22nd, at 12:30 in Hall H. I don't care. I'm not going to be there. My big question about all of these is, will any of this make it to YouTube? I don't think it will. Like, that undercuts the entire reason for having a con, right? Or maybe it will, like, weeks later.
Yeah, they're probably not going to do it. Although I don't know. Like, it feels like people are trying to do hybrid stuff kind of unsuccessfully, but I feel like it'll take all the excitement out of it. But who knows? I mean,
yeah,
I guess we'll see.
Well, this even just the blurb announcing the panel for Tales of the Walking Dead, which is the upcoming spinoff, it also announces the premiere date, which is August 14th, and that's fantastic. Not as soon as we'd like it, but there's some other stuff in July that means this will be great. It'll give us time to process.
Yeah.
And this panel will feature Scott Gimple, Channing Powell, who's the showrunner. Michael Satrazemis is the director and EP, and he was the showrunner for The World Beyond, as I recall, right? Or was that Matthew Negrete?
I thought it was Satrazemis.
It might have. I don't recall. And then Terry Crews, Samantha Morton, aka Alpha, and Danny Ramirez, who I believe is one of the other cast members from Tales of the Walking Dead, also had a small but speaking role on not Winter Soldier, but the Falcon TV show, Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So they will have their panel, and I believe they will, reveal some new bits and bobs about that show. I'm still unreasonably excited about Tales of the Walking Dead. I really need to check myself.
Yeah, I think you should check yourself for a minute and just have a moment, wait and see what happens.
Okay,
But
thanks for
yeah,
that. Thanks for that unpep talk, AJ
I'm
Conrad.
sorry, but you just got to manage your
Yeah, you got to
expectations.
settle down, man. You got to have, expect the worst, hope for the best.
Hmm.
And then the Walking Dead Prime is also having a panel on the 22nd, just 1 hour later. And Scott Gimple is in that one too. So he's a busy dude. He's just going to sit at the same table and people will file in around him.
Yep.
This is a much larger panel, though. It's going to have Angela Kang, our fave,
Yay.
director and special effects supervisor Greg Nicotero.
Nice.
And they'll be trotting out a bunch of the actors who are soon to be no longer employed by The Walking Dead. I imagine this is probably I don't know if this is one of their last, but they've got to be not having as many of these requirements anymore since the show has wrapped months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be Norman Reedus. He still has a job. Melissa McBride, Christian Serratos, who is Rosita, Ross Marquand, Aaron, Carrie Payton, Ezekiel, Seth Gilliam, Father Gabriel, Josh McDermott, Eugene, Michael James Shaw, Kaylee Fleming, and Lauren Ridloff. I don't know who any of those are. I think Lauren Ridloff might be Lydia.
Yeah, I think that's who that is. Yep.
I think. I don't recall. Or is that Judith? Either way, so those last three names I'm not familiar with. Oh, Michael James Shaw is Mercer.
Oh, Lauren. She is not.
No, is she someone else?
She is very much somebody
Lauren
else.
Ridloff. The name is familiar.
She's Connie.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, and Kaylee Fleming is Judith.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, nobody ever accused me of being too smart. So in this, they're going to announce, we think, the premiere date for the final volume of season 11. And I don't know what else. Some funny stories.
Well, I think there will be a lot of reminiscing and all that stuff. You know how they do that kind of, fan service and all that for these kinds of like the farewell, the long goodbye, and all that stuff.
It feels like a very long goodbye, given that it's 24 episode season. Like this is the longest of goodbyes. But they've earned it. They've earned it after 11 seasons, and those 11 seasons taking place over 12 years.
Yeah. So.
And then another panel that I'm kind of less excited about, but I want to be excited about, is the Anne Rice TV series that I think is also coming to AMC. And that will be the next day on Saturday, July 23rd at 2, featuring executive producer Mark Johnson, creator, writer, and showrunner Roland Jones, and then cast members Sam Reed, Jacob Anderson, Bailey Bass, and Eric Bogosian. I don't know any of those people. Sam Reed. Wait, is Sam Reed the guy from Jurassic Park?
I don't know.
Sam, nope. I need to stop guessing who people are.
There's been not a ton of information about this show, and so far any kind of like live actions like rendition of Anne Rice's novels have been pretty poor, at least from my point of view. So
Queen of the Damned is one of the few films that I walked out of in the theater.
Oh, it's so bad. It was so bad. And I like maybe this is different. Maybe this will be actually a really good series. So I will reserve judgment until it actually comes out. I do think it feels like there's a dearth of information, and maybe they're just saving that up to sort of build anticipation for this panel. But it's a little worrying that we haven't heard that much. So we'll see. And it's hopeful. Maybe it'll be good, and I my fears will be totally incorrect. But
yeah,
I just, it's not ever been something that they've been successful in leveraging into a decent show. And it
wasn't
seems
Interview with a Vampire decent with those Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise?
I thought that was terrible.
Did you not enjoy that at all?
I did not. I thought it was really bad. I mean,
Kirsten Dunst, I think, was I
think that she was the only saving grace of that film. I think, and like, I just thought it was terrible. And I mean, the idea of Tom Cruise as a stat is just laughable.
Tom Cruise is one of these actors who, when people hear who he's playing, they're always like, that guy? No way. Jack Reacher was one of those roles that giant dude from
Right.
Titans has gone on to completely embody, because he actually is 7 feet tall, which is what
Well,
Reacher is supposed to be.
and that's my thing. And I think that I think that Tom Cruise is good at some very specific roles, and that's fine. I think he gets excited about certain characters and wants to play those characters. He never should have been cast as Jack Reacher. I think he did do some kind of interpretation of that, which I guess was okay. I just thought after you see the series, how could you ever think that anybody but that dude should be playing Jack Reacher? You know what I
Right.
mean? The series was so good, and it exactly. I just thought that that actor did such an amazing job. Like,
Have you ever read those books?
I've read like a couple, like I've read like one or two of them, and like they're that formulaic kind of vengeance thing.
Mhm.
Like very, it feels a little bit like Clancy.
Yeah, I just watched, kind of binged actually last weekend or last week, all of the Terminal List, which is a Chris Pratt vehicle on Amazon Prime.
Oh, how was that? I saw it being advertised, but I haven't watched it yet.
I mean, it was entertaining. It's kind of more of that though. It's like,
Yeah. I mean, there is a form, you know what I mean? There's like
yeah,
a formula to these kinds of things, and it's not bad. It's entertaining, but you're kind of like, okay, how many more shows can we have like this? But,
yeah.
you know, but regardless, I just think that he did such a better job as Jack Reacher. And I think this is the same thing. I think that there's a few different people that could play these kinds of roles, but he's just not like Tom Cruise. It shouldn't be playing Lestat. So
Well, I
anyhow,
don't think is up for the role in this one. I believe it's this guy Sam Reed, who is not in Jurassic Park. He's an Australian actor though, like Sam Neill, who
oh,
was in Jurassic Park.
nice.
I'm an idiot. But
Well,
so this guy
you
was
know,
born in 1987. He's blonde. I think Lestat is blonde. So there you go. Right away, he's closer. Of course, it would be even better if he was French, but we'll take Australian in a pinch.
yeah, he's closer. He's all right, I suppose.
So we will hopefully get some more details about that show and follow them eagerly. And I think, we're definitely vampire curious on Reanimated. So there's a potential future where we talk about that show on this very
Yeah, yeah.
podcast.
I will absolutely give it a try. I'm just reserving, I'm reserving my judgment, managing my expectations, until we get there. And the other thing that AMC also acquired rights to is the Lives of the Mayfair Witches, which is another Anne Rice.
Yeah, I think they got her whole catalog, didn't they?
Yeah, and so that's the other thing. And again, like, look, there's some things that you could easily make into like a good thing. I do think she goes off the rails a lot.
Yeah.
And so let's see what happens. There's lots of ways you could go wrong, as well
Yeah.
as lots of ways you could go right with
I'm
all of
thinking
these
about
movies.
the parts of Lasher and
Yeah,
those books that I remember, and they
yeah,
are pretty
they're
freaking
pretty
out
bad.
there.
Yeah, they're pretty bad. And she's like, I mean, especially with like that particular, I don't know that it looks like, now I'm looking at it, it looks like she wrote a lot more in that series that I just never got to, because I was like, oh, these are pretty, pretty rough. But I think she was going for like a super kind of like gothic, over the top soap opera tale, and she did, but it was making this into, I guess it lends itself to making a really dramatic series, if you're going to go that way, but we shall see.
Mm.
Pretty, I don't know, I just thought some of it was so like crazy crazy, and like, oh my gosh, really, that's where you went. That I just, the idea of it as a show, we'll have to see where they take this, so to speak. So
Definitely.
putting that on the back burner, would you want to talk about another show that could potentially go off the rails, which is what we're going to be talking about today?
No, Marvel Zombies
Oh
was
wait, Marvel Zombies, that's right, sorry about that, go for it.
so the non AMC announcement that we should be excited about at Comic-Con is going to be Marvel, who are going to be on Friday the 22nd, just before and during the Walking Dead panels. So I guess you can't have all of your cake and eat it too. And that's going to be exclusive looks at X-Men 97, What If Season 2, and Marvel Zombies, the show,
Mm.
which we have talked about a little bit. I think I was wondering if it was actually happening. So I guess it is, and we're going to see a little bit of it, maybe, or people at Comic-Con will. The
Oh
rest of
no,
us might have to wait a
that'll
while.
definitely get leaked. It'll
Yeah,
definitely get leaked.
yeah.
Come on.
Grainy cell phone video
Yeah.
coming any moment.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm pretty excited to have a glance at what that's going to be. I want to know, like, how many episodes they're looking at. Um, I don't want them to fall down on this one. I want this to be of the same level as a yeah, I would like this to be a good show. So please execute. These are just going to be all animated shows, though. X-Men 97, Marvel Zombies, and What If. Obviously, What If already came out. This is an animated show, which kind of introduced us to Marvel Zombies. So how cool is that? That just like a short time later, they're talking about the Marvel Zombies show,
I know.
spin-off, if you will. Very exciting stuff.
Yep. And now we can talk about the other thing.
Now we can talk about it.
We are talking about Day of the Dead television series, which premiered on SyFy, or SyFy as I like to call it sometimes, in the fall. And at this point in time, it has not been canceled or renewed. So I would say probably unlikely it's going to come back. But we're going to talk about it. We watched the first couple episodes. I have to confess, I watched more than the first couple episodes. So,
oh, HA, how
I know
you got that caught up in it that you were just like, oh, I've got to keep watching.
No, it was more like, does it get better? And so anyway,
well, that's of the array of reactions you could have to a show. That's not the worst. Like,
no, and there were definitely some promising things in this, and I was trying to sort of get into the sort of the idea of what they were trying to do here. And there's some things that they do that are very Romero-esque and very much playing into that legacy, which is good given that it's named Day of the Dead.
They're trying. They're
trying, but not always successfully.
I wish there was more background or behind the scenes and from production information about this show. I feel like there's really very little out there.
And there isn't. And so that was the other thing is I was like, okay, let me see a little bit more about this. And really just not a ton of information, which I thought was interesting because you would have thought that they would have tried to leverage, at least for like PR purposes, just trying to do even just some interviews and things like that. And it just it seems pretty sort of silent about this particular
SyFy itself, SyFy.com, they have a team of writers who are recapping the show and talking about power rankings and doing that kind of stuff, mostly just to build up the hype. But yeah, as far as actual behind the scenes or like people reviewing it, it's pretty
no, that's what I was saying. There just wasn't a lot. And honestly, like even with Black Summer, you would see just so much more out there. And I'll admit to you, I was having like some hopes that this would be like a sleeper Black Summer, but I kind of thought it wasn't, given that we hadn't heard that much about it. In fact, we kind of forgot about it. So that tells you something.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm happy to chat about it and let's talk about the first couple of episodes. And they do very much like a cold open in that we've got a very immediate zombie emergency. And so they set the table, but they set it in a similar way so that it's not like you're getting a full lead up. And so they have these two teens that have been in a car accident, and they wake up and they see all the sort of zombies running around. And then they do sort of you get the idea that everything's been overrun and they're escaping, and you get the immediate zombie effects, like the zombies are slow. There is definitely like a camp horror element to this from the get-go. And that to me is very much true to how Romero did these kinds of films. But so that to me was like right off the bat, I was like, okay, slow zombies.
I would say though these two guys, Cam, the characters Cam, and what's the other dude's name? Luke,
Luke.
they look too much alike, even though they have different color hair.
Yeah,
Their
right. Like
hairstyles are the same, and they're about the same
they're
height, and they're both white guys. I'm just like, these guys are like twins almost, except that one of them has brown hair, one of them is blonde, but their
one is
haircuts are
wearing
almost the
shorts.
same. Yeah,
One
one of
is
them is
wearing
wearing cargo
shorts.
shorts, which I did
In
notice because
fact, that is how I used. That's what I used to differ. Oh, it's the shorts guy,
it was just
right? Like
they
I
just
used
look
that
like
to.
two young actors trying to find their break, but also having like medium long actor hair. Like,
Yeah.
give one of these guys a different haircut for God's sake. That's all I
Well,
want.
yeah. They look very. They have similar things going on. But just sort of the whole. Okay, they're gonna escape, and the campy part that I'm talking about, it's the makeup and the effects, but they are slow zombies. They're very much Romero zombies, um but there is also that sort of like ridiculousness of when they're running away from these things, which are they get like boxed into a corner in a way that's kind of silly because they could just run around these things.
Yeah.
And it feels like it's kind of forced, or you're just like, oh, for the love of Pete, just run around them because they're not moving that fast.
And they do one of these things that Romero movies would do where they would show you a close up of a zombie,
Right,
but it's in one area. And then these
right,
guys run down an alley and around a corner, and that same zombie shows up there like 2 seconds later, and you're just
right,
like,
right.
wait, weren't you over there
Just
before?
over there,
And
and they do reuse a lot of the zombies, which
yeah.
I think was kind of deliberate, honestly. And they do that whole thing where it's like you see the ER zombie, and you know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Like they do that whole thing where it's like you have the zombie characters basically. And
This
then
is all taking place in the town of, because I think we see the town sign.
you do,
What's it called? Minnehaken or something like that,
yeah, something like that.
which gives you East Coast vibes, but the weather is definitely giving me West Coast vibes. It's like overcast. It reminds me of the X-Files. It's just it's like gray. It's like Vancouver weather, I feel like.
So yeah, I think it's supposed to be set in Pennsylvania, but I definitely didn't feel like this was in Pennsylvania. And so that is also a callback to the Romero thing, the whole Pennsylvania thing.
Yeah,
But
and I would
I
say that Luke has a slight hint of a Canadian accent. I don't know if he is
oh yes,
Canadian.
he definitely does, and yes, he is.
Yeah.
And he's not the only one. There's a few people with some very Canadian accents, and honestly, I didn't. I kept thinking, oh yeah, this is up in Canada. I know it's ridiculous because it's clearly supposed to be set in America, but I think he's not the only one that has that Canadian thing going on. And as it turns out, I think they filmed this in Vancouver.
Well, he's from Vancouver, so this is backyard.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where X Files was shot. I don't know if that's just me making a leap, but I was like, this does feel a lot like Scully and Mulder are going to run out of the woods here any second and flash badges.
that would have been a really great thing to happen. I would have been on board with such a thing. But
Uh,
so anyway, they do this cold open, and you get this sort of level of ridiculousness toward the end of this particular scene, and the mayor shows up. We know she's the mayor because they sort of preview this with the campaign posters and things like that.
there's like a front page article also.
Yep. And so we know this, and it's Luke's mom, and she's carrying a gun and is two guns and is talking about Second Amendment rights. And it's like, oh no, really? And I was like, oh, this is a rough one to be watching this week. But that they make fun of that later on too.
Well,
But
it's a huge, it's a massive part of their, big capital T theme for this show is this like conservative politics, and we get into it more and more in the first two episodes.
Yep. And then we also get a glimpse of, definitely a callback to Romero, but we get a glimpse as the teens are escaping with the gun-toting mayor of a bub, which turns out to be Cam's dad. And
why do you feel like he's a bub?
Because he's wearing a jacket that says bub.
Oh yeah, it does.
So that's a callback to Romero and Day of the Dead. And so that's definitely, and then they flash into like the however out many hours, or it's hours before, right? Or days
Hours or
before.
weeks. I kind of missed that also.
Yeah. And then they go, and then they, start the sort of where the story all began. Um, so, and lots of modern elements thrown into this, but I would say a similar commentary on capitalism, and in this case, it's about fracking. So they added that sort of more modern day twist to this. Um, but that is sort of where the origins of this story start out, is basically at this fracking site. And you get the sense, even from like the flashes of the mayor's campaign and the articles and things like that, this is like a bone of contention in the town, and certainly a hot button issue.
Yeah.
And so that is sort of where the beginning starts out. And I don't think that it's the worst way to start. It did feel a little forced and a little like silly, but I also felt like they were trying to do that. I think it was somewhat deliberate. Like they're trying to sort of walk this line of seriousness and campy and ridiculousness, but also, hey, we're talking about serious issues. And I think that is definitely trying to be in line with the Romero way of doing things.
Yeah, I think they're trying to stay Romero, but I think that also comes with its own share of peril, because Romero is often way heavy-handed and ham-fisted with the way he presented his thematic material.
Yeah, and I don't know that they're always successful in sort of walking that line. But we've got, and it did feel like, I felt like these two episodes felt really slow to me, or there were parts that felt really slow. Did you feel that pacing was a little off,
I'd
or
say
am
the
I just
slowest part of this episode, the first episode, was when he tries to drive away from a crowd of zombies in the cemetery on his riding lawnmower,
yeah,
which moves slower than he could walk. I
right.
mean, they wanted that because that's on the poster, is
Yeah,
like mowing zombie heads as they come out of the ground. You have
yeah.
like they're really committed to that. I used to have one of those riding lawnmowers. They can go way faster than they have this guy going. So that was just like kind of absurd. But yes, it was a little slow paced. Um, it's just not helped by the fact that it's so overcast and gray, and like this guy's supposed to be getting married, and I'm like, you're getting married and outside, and it's like completely overcast and gray out. Gross.
Well, also he's getting married on a weekday,
Is
which
is it a
I
weekday?
thought
It's not clear.
I think it is a weekday. And it's kind of strange. It just feels the whole that part feels odd. Um, and so there's
Yeah.
like things like that are a little, uh, and then the other part of the sort of the pacing, there's a lot of dramatic pauses or moments that I'm just like, okay, this could have just been tightened. You could have tightened this up in the editing room. Like you don't need to sort of go like, I guess I understand why they did some of these things because it seems so deliberate, but it also wasn't necessarily successful. The one part I was thinking about was with the oh gosh, why the name of it is escaping me. The guy who owns the funeral home, or who works at the funeral home,
Yeah, Laszlo.
Laszlo. And there's a lot done to make him very like evil, mustache twirly, and
He's
that
just gross.
he's gross. And I'm not shocked, because this is also like, it was a very heavy-handed way to treat this, and I don't know that they necessarily needed to do that, um other than to make the audience cheer once he gets his comeuppance. But I just thought that all of those things were really unnecessary. So they do things with him where he's um basically blackmailing Lauren, who's on parole, and works in the funeral home, to go out for a drink with him. I mean, I guess they use this speech to reveal that she's sober and that she's had issues and that she's on parole, and that's probably the purpose of this. But then they get into like this kind of gross stuff with him where he's got a secret camera in the room watching her undress, which I was like, do we really need to do that? Just his comments before were gross enough. I don't know. What do you think, Stuart?
Yeah, you probably don't need to double down with that.
Right.
But how else were they going to get her to have like a almost nude scene?
Yeah, I guess so. But it just, to me, seemed completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
And
Maybe they
then
were just really making sure that he deserved to die, you know?
right. And then also and I would say we have like a few different sections of the cast. So we've got the Cam and Luke kind of section, although they're not actually together for a lot of this. But
They only have one scene together and they're enemies, like mortal enemies.
right. But it's like the mayor and her entourage, that whole thing. There's also Lauren, who kind of interacts with Cam, so I guess they have their own little thing.
They have chemistry, I think.
Yeah, no, they're good together. And then Luke's actually with another actor for most of this.
Who is who? Like, what's that kid's name? What's the actor's name? I have no idea.
I don't know, it's escaping me. But they do a good job, I think, at sort of showing the different stories. And then the story that I'm most confused by is actually the doctor story, Jay. He's supposed to be he's the one supposed to be getting married on a weekday. There's lots of things going on with him, and it seems like this day just has a lot of time in it for a wedding day, and he's doing things that I just think are weird for a wedding day.
He's going to work.
He's going to like work, then he goes like, I don't know, it just feels like he has way too much time on his hands.
Yeah.
On his wedding day.
And he's marrying horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, his fiance seems to be a terrible person. I mean, that's maybe a stretch. Like the fact that her ex-boyfriend is her man of honor, which they're making into a whole thing in this plot. The fact that she, like, this is an episode 2, but she like manipulates him into not delaying the wedding so that his parents can attend.
Yeah. And that to me is like, okay, dude, you know your answer now, and that's that this shouldn't be happening, right?
And her dad is also gives him a prenup on the wedding day. I mean, I realize that I'm just like regurgitating story parts that are supposed to make me feel this way, but the thing you start to think is like, yeah, Jay has no backbone and he's making bad decisions, and so there's plenty of room for him to have a heroic story arc, I guess, now, because he's going to go from this guy who's getting pushed around by these horrible people, and hopefully we'll be able to rise up.
Right. And I mean, and they're doing that deliberately. They're also, I'm sure, making her horrible, and the father-in-law horrible, all sorts of things with him, just so that I guess we can watch him triumph, or I hope we'll watch him triumph. And I do like him as an actor. I think he's very good. I just think, at least at this point, there isn't a ton of like, I don't know, there's not a ton to grab onto here, but I think that's, as you're predicting, probably going to be a transformation.
He also has almost the same volume of hair as those other 2 young actors.
Yeah, what's up with that hairstyle?
Almost. I don't know. It's just actually a lot of hair.
Yeah. And then there is a character in this that they introduce, which I actually really enjoy, and she's the elderly woman that's his patient that he's given a terminal like prognosis for. And she's kind of fun, but again, very tropey, and like, she's like drinking spirits that she's hidden. She's like sassy. She's like, oh, I'm just gonna, I'm 84 years old, I'm just gonna like kick off now, like, so there's like there's definitely these tropey characters that they're, and tropey themes that they're kind of putting through their paces here. So
yeah.
And that includes like the whole thing with the 2 friends that have drifted apart, and all of that.
Oh, is that okay, maybe that's from later on where you realize that they're drifted apart. I don't think I've gotten that impression yet. There's a very actually, I don't even know if this is that Romero-esque, but where there's a scene where Cam and Lauren are in the funeral home right after she's bashed Peepaw's head in, and they've actually, it's in episode 2, so this was a scene from the trailer. We knew it was coming. It's still funny where she kills
it is funny,
zombie
and it's
grandpa. They go down to the basement. There's problems in the basement.
Yes.
And they come back up, and then Cam says to her, it's not their fault. The system preys on their prejudices, and it uses them for their vote and abandons them to big corporations to profit off their misery. You're just like, whoa, that's your thesis. Like, that's and it's a little bit much for them to actually come out and say all that. But I guess, if in a way, because of the way that they're introducing some of these characters, it's not really clear yet if they are actually proponents of fracking and open carry law. You're not really sure. But then once Cam comes out and says that in the second episode, and they could have waited a while longer and just
Yep.
kind of like eked it
Very
out a little
direct.
bit more.
Very direct.
Very
They
direct.
do this. They do this also with like um the fracking site and the people on the site there, and
Yeah.
there's all sorts of very, I don't know, very, to me, very clear signaling where this theme is headed.
I feel like the thing
Which
that Cam says in the funeral home might have been something that a talking head might have said on TV in Dawn of the Dead.
I think it is actually, or
That
very
sort of
similar.
delivery of exposition where it was usually kind of like, oh, what's on TV? Oh, those guys are still arguing. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Uh,
Um,
yeah.
to me, like some of the most fun scenes though were the funeral home scenes.
Yes. Because the woman
I
playing Lauren is a lot of fun.
awesome, and she's
She's funny. She's got a lot of charisma. She's a nice looking lady. And yeah, she's like the cast of characters in that basement room are really serving up some fun performances. Like the moron, the grandson of the dead guy, is pretty funny. His cousin or whatever who opens the door, who apparently has a PhD in sociology, like this, the one who let the zombies out is the smart one.
yeah, which they call out, which is pretty funny.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff going on there. I don't know how much patience I have for the super fake guts stuff.
I mean, that's kind of deliberate and schlocky, I think, for a reason. And that is very Romero. And like the one thing that they just really just play to the hilt is that noise, that like wet, disgusting noise that they do throughout it, which, and all of this and silly, ridiculous things with the, intestines and the things that, like I think are definitely over the top, but I think they're trying to do it in a very campy way.
Yeah.
And that's, I would also say that the character of Lauren, the sort of like canon of Day of the Dead and the Romero series, so she gets bitten.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll have to see what happens there. But it feels like that isn't, I don't know. We'll have to see what happens with that. And also, in terms of killing these things, they don't even seem to die when you hit them in the head.
Yeah, they'd cut one of their heads right off, and it still stood up and walked around, didn't they? Yeah, that was messed up. And the guy who reanimates at the end of episode 2 was shot in the head. Like that was his method. That was his cause of death. So we might be looking at a Return of the Living Dead sort of scenario here, where we've got extra hard to kill zombies.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, a lot of episode 2 consists. Well, there are several scenes in episode 2 of Luke and his buddy hauling a keg through the woods. I think that might lead to some of why these episodes drag a fair amount. Those scenes they're not usually long scenes, and they are developing character and make you like Luke more, I would say, because of the things he's saying to his friend. And they also deliver a little bit of this background where he's like, when maybe the Enfields are behind this, they have these people who basically got buried in a lake, and I think we might get to meet them, and they might be behind the ultimate reason for why everything is happening that's happening.
Yeah, but they also do a little bit of at least when Jay goes out to the wedding site, which is like a country club, they have all this sort of history of the Native Americans that have lived there.
Yeah.
So I was like, we have a few possible reasons, and they seem to linger upon those things a really long time. So wait for that to come back, I suppose. I think one of the more, to me, that the scenes in the woods were kind of draggy. I also thought that the stuff out at the fracking site was kind of like, it felt slow to me, and obvious to me, because they find basically a zombie with a sort of like a mask on in like this cave of the fracking site, clearly setting up this Blackwood woman as a hero. Although she's pretty cool, I like her. But there's this whole sort of like roundabout way where she's like a whistleblower and calls the cops about the fact that they found a body. The company foreman is really angry that she did this, and then corporate intervenes somehow to get the mayor or somebody to call off um the investigation. But yet those, if it wasn't for those meddling kids, we're going to go and like explore this, and that's with Cam's dad, and he's, you know, like it's pretty clear that like the wife has died or something, and he's sad, and he and Cam aren't getting along, and I don't know, he's a detective, and like that whole story felt very draggy and kind of like
part of the reason why is because he's dead. Like, why do we need to go through all of this like stuff with him?
And it's a lot, like it just keeps, it's just really draggy. And so, there's this whole drama thing where they put him down in the hole and they're going to frack with him in there. And
so much B-roll, so much of the same B-roll of somebody's hands manipulating the levers and the drill thing going up and down.
Yeah,
You're just like,
it's like,
I don't need to see this so many times. We've seen it once.
Right. So anyway, I just felt like some of this could have been edited a little bit more neatly, but
yeah. So these episodes, they're shooting for like a 45-minute runtime or whatever, or like an hour-long TV slot, I guess. And yeah, it does feel like a long time versus watching Stranger Things, like hour and a half long episodes. And I'm just like, oh, it's over already.
I know, which, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. So
clearly we're talking about two very different budget realities.
Yeah, but, that's true. But, I feel like they had enough of a budget here to at least be okay with editing. So that, because to me, it wasn't even like effects or anything like that. To me, this was just pure, like, why would we, like, maybe they were trying to fill, I suppose, but it feels like they should have had enough to go with. So it also felt a little bit like that once they, are escaping the funeral home, because they make a lot out of the sort of throwing the guts out of the back of the hearse. Like that scene went on for a really long time.
Yeah. And then they don't even pick up the other randos. They just kind of like drive away from them, right? Which is, maybe that was the plan, because they're just trying to like create an escape. Yeah, an opportunity. The mayor character, clearly she's going to be around for a while. Mm-hmm. She feels like she's a little too ripped from the headlines of like, totally some members of the House of Representatives right now, except she's the mayor of a small town. Like part of the disconnect for me is that they are taking like current national politics and baking it down into a one town sort of microcosm.
Well, but they also have like, she's clearly ambitious. So like, I think that they're trying, again, it's like playing to this very specific trope, right? Like it's putting this trope in, and this is very, I mean, Romero did that too, especially with like Day of the Dead with the military people, right? Mm. And that was one of the complaints that we had about some of the things that he does, is that it's very much like a flat characterization, right?
Maybe she'll have more room to grow in the future episodes. I don't know that we're going to come back to this show. Do you feel like we should? I don't know that we should.
I think we could watch the rest of it and summarize. I don't think we should do an episode by episode.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, there are parts of it that are a lot of fun to watch, but I'd say that they are the minority. Yeah. Okay. Well, do you have anything else to talk about in the first two episodes?
No, I think we have covered it. I think it'll be interesting to see if they actually do renew this, but it doesn't feel like, I feel like if they haven't by now, like, no. It doesn't feel like that's what's going to happen, right?
Who knows, man? Like Black Summer hasn't been renewed as far as we know.
No, true.
And yet that show,
that's head and shoulders above this show, but
it's amazing.
It is. Yeah. So, all right. Well, then I would say, without further ado, let us wrap up. But what do you want to talk about next time? Are we going to do why don't we start with the Resident Evil series? And do you want to try the first couple episodes?
Yeah, let's do it.
If you have any thoughts about Day of the Dead series, please leave us a message on the website, reanimatedpodcast.com.
It's been years.
I know. Also tweeted us, reanimatedpcast, or you can Gmail us at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. And that is all, folks. Ciao.
That's all, folks. That's not copyrighted or anything.
Oh,
Thanks
yeah.
for
Sorry.
listening. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you later.